Welcome to today's deep dive. We are turning our attention to, well, an urgent and massive urban crisis unfolding right this very minute in Uganda.
Yeah, specifically centered in the capital city of Kampala.
Right. And our insights today are pulled directly from excerpts of a deeply revealing report. It's titled Progress or Peril: The Ugandan Urban Demolition Crisis.
It's a really heavy read, honestly.
It is, and our mission today is to look beyond the literal dust of the bulldozers. We really want to understand the starkly different narrative.
This massive governmental campaign
Right, but it's simultaneously causing mass displacement and, just profound uncertainty for thousands of citizens. So, okay, let's unpack this. Because to really understand the sheer scale of what's happening on the ground, you kind of have to put yourself in a very specific area. Like, imagine you rely strictly on the money you make today. Just
living entirely day to day.
Exactly. You go to sleep anxious for your survival. But then tomorrow morning, you wake up to the sound of a massive, diesel-guzzling bulldozer leveling your place of business.
Or your home.
Right, your entire neighborhood. And you receive absolutely zero warning.
Yeah, and that suddenness, that's really the defining characteristic of this entire operation.
It's terrifying.
It is. The source material outlines how, in recent weeks, heavy demolition teams, and these are heavily backed by state security forces, by the way, have been aggressively sweeping through major Ugandan cities.
Just clearing everything out.
Systematically. They're clearing out what the government has officially designated as illegal structures.
Okay, but we have to define what that bureaucratic umbrella term actually covers, right? Because an illegal structure sounds like, I don't know, a skyscraper built without a permit.
Right, but in this context, it includes massive informal settlements where, entire generational families live.
Wow.
Yeah, and it also includes tiny roadside kiosks, sprawling market stalls, and structures built out on wetlands or along road reserves.
So the phrase informal settlement gets thrown around a lot in these urban planning discussions. But we need to clarify what makes these areas informal in the first place.
Well, these are citizens operating entirely outside the legal safety net.
Right. They don't have property deeds.
No deeds. They lack formal building permits. Their businesses aren't officially registered with the state.
So they exist in this total legal gray area, meaning that when the government decides to move in, these people have absolutely zero legal recourse.
None. They can't fight back or demand compensation. And that lack of legal standing provides the exact mechanism the authorities are using to execute these sweeps so rapidly.
How so?
Well, when you analyze the legal framework being applied here, lumping a massive multifamily neighborhood together with, like, a temporary vegetable stand.
Under that singular classification of illegal structures.
Exactly. It creates this really powerful bureaucratic loophole. It allows the government to completely bypass standard, lengthy judicial eviction processes.
Oh, I see. Because normally you'd have to take a landlord to court over a zoning violation.
Which could take years of appeals.
Right.
But this classification reduces the whole issue to a simple administrative obstruction. The law treats a concrete home built without a permit on a wetland exactly the same way it treats a discarded tire blocking traffic.
Wow.
Both are merely objects to be removed by force.
But the terrifying reality to grasp here is that in Kampala, these aren't just objects. These are real, breathing neighborhoods being erased before breakfast.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's so easy to think of city planning like someone casually playing a video game, like SimCity or something.
Right, yeah.
You decide a certain district doesn't fit your aesthetic vision, so you just click and drag your cursor and boom, the whole area is wiped clean, so you can drop down a shiny new highway.
But these are real lives.
Exactly. The shock factor of thousands of street vendors being pushed out of city centers seemingly overnight, it is staggering. It's a blanket operation that is completely upending the daily rhythm of the city.
And, the presence of heavily armed security forces amplifies that shock factor tremendously.
I can imagine.
We aren't talking about a municipal official in a high-visibility vest handing out a citation with a clipboard.
Right. It's not a parking ticket.
No, this is a forceful, militarized clearing of physical space. Deploying state security forces alongside the heavy machinery sends a definitive message to the populace.
Which is what?
That the era of negotiation, of turning a blind eye to these informal expansions or offering a gradual transition period, that has entirely passed. The authorities have decided to move with absolute, uncompromising momentum.
You know, it's incredibly easy to look at the sheer destruction on the ground, see the bulldozers, and immediately assign villainy.
Right.
But these demolition teams didn't just go rogue. They are following a very specific, calculated blueprint drawn up by city planners.
Planners who are looking at a completely different set of impending disasters.
Exactly. So let's play devil's advocate for a second. If we step back and look impartially at the government's official rationale driving these bulldozers, they argue that these actions are fundamentally built on three core pillars.
Restoring order, driving modernization, and ensuring public safety.
Right. So to genuinely understand their perspective, we have to examine the specific physical hazards those planners are trying to mitigate.
Well, Kampala's authorities argue that these informal structures are literally choking the life out of the city.
How bad is it?
Extremely bad. Unregulated market stalls and makeshift homes have swallowed vital arterial roads, and that causes massive traffic gridlock that just paralyzes commerce and logistics.
Oh, wow.
Furthermore, they point to severe, sometimes lethal flooding.
Because of the wetlands.
Exactly. Kampala relies on its natural wetlands to act as a drainage system. When informal settlements are built over those wetlands, they essentially pave over the city's natural sponge.
And then the water has nowhere to go.
Right. Finally, these settlements blatantly violate established urban planning laws that are designed to keep the basic infrastructure of the city from total collapse.
Yeah, I mean, let's look at the city's actual blueprint for a second. If an ambulance cannot reach a dying patient because an entire unregistered market has spilled over and swallowed a 4-lane arterial road,
Right.
that is a massive, undeniable public safety failure. The government isn't entirely wrong to demand functioning roads. You simply cannot have commerce or emergency services or basic sanitation if no one can move through the city.
No, you really can't.
And building on wetlands. That genuinely causes catastrophic flooding when the heavy rains come. We have to acknowledge the terrifying threat of a city collapsing under its own unregulated weight. The authorities' ultimate stated goal is a necessary effort to clean up urban spaces to prevent a larger catastrophe.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, what we are witnessing in Kampala is the universal defining tension of the modern metropolis in the developing world.
That friction between growth and planning.
Exactly. You have rapid, largely unregulated population growth colliding violently with the rigid, necessary laws of urban planning. People flock to cities like Kampala in massive numbers, seeking economic opportunity.
Of course.
However, the city does not have the affordable housing, the sanitation networks, or the foundational infrastructure to absorb them.
Right, because human beings need a place to sleep and a place to trade.
So they settle wherever there is empty physical space, a road reserve, a drainage ditch, an alleyway.
They do what they have to do to survive. If the formal city won't accommodate them, they basically carve out their own informal city within the cracks of the official one.
Yes. But fast forward a decade or two of that unchecked growth, and the city has entirely overgrown its sustainable boundaries. The traffic arteries are calcified, the natural floodplains are buried under concrete and corrugated tin.
And the sewage systems,
designed for a fraction of the current population. They're completely overwhelmed, creating the very real, terrifying threat of widespread disease outbreaks. So from the perspective of the authorities, the city is suffocating to death. To them, these extreme measures, these militarized overnight demolitions, they're not malicious.
they see it as a cure.
Right. They feel like a desperately necessary, albeit incredibly harsh, reset button. They genuinely believe that without this forceful intervention, the entire urban ecosystem will experience a catastrophic failure.
Compromising the safety and lives of millions of residents.
Exactly.
Okay, but here's where it gets really interesting, or perhaps deeply tragic is the better way to frame it.
Yeah.
Because how does a government successfully reconcile the concept of modernizing a city with completely severing its poorest, most vulnerable citizens from their only means of daily survival?
It's the impossible question.
Right. When a bulldozer destroys a market stall, it isn't just clearing a sidewalk so pedestrians can walk a little faster. It is literally taking away tonight's dinner for a family.
Yeah.
We have to shift our focus from that macro-level view of urban hydrology and traffic logistics down to the micro-level reality of the individuals caught directly in the crosshairs.
And that micro-level reality is steeped in profound, paralyzing uncertainty. The source material is very clear on this point.
What does the report say?
That for the thousands of Ugandans experiencing these sweeps, this does not feel like a step toward a shining, modernized future. It feels like an aggressive, hostile displacement.
Right.
It is a direct, immediate threat to their very survival. They are not thinking about the 10-year macroeconomic plan, They are thinking about how to feed their children tomorrow morning.
Take the street vendors, for example, who are a massive target of this clearing campaign. The mechanics of their survival are entirely day-to-day.
Literally day-to-day.
A vendor might buy a basket of tomatoes at 5:00 a.m. wholesale, sell them on the street corner by 5:00 p.m., and use that specific profit to buy maize flour to feed their kids at 7:00 p.m.
Right. There is no savings account.
There is no financial buffer.
Huh.
If the state removes them from the city centers overnight, the consequence isn't just the inconvenience of finding a new place to set up shop.
No, the consequence is immediate, devastating poverty. It is instant hunger. And what's fascinating here is the specific word choice used by the officials to describe this operation, which we touched on earlier, the effort to clean up the city.
Oh, right. The language they use.
Yeah. When you analyze the linguistics of bureaucracy, terms like cleaning up or clearing out serve a very specific, deliberate psychological purpose. They sterilize the human element of the action.
Cleaning up sounds like wiping a spill off a kitchen counter.
Exactly. It implies the removal of dirt, the removal of a nuisance in order to reveal something polished and functioning underneath.
So when you frame it as cleaning up, you're placing a family's home in the exact same category as a pile of garbage on the sidewalk.
Yes.
It makes the destruction sound hygienic instead of devastating. It completely neutralizes the empathy we would normally feel for someone losing their home.
And that linguistic neutralization highlights the inherent tragic disconnect at the very center of this crisis.
How do you make...
Well, when the city planners and authorities look at these informal settlements, they literally only see structures. They see a configuration of concrete, tin, and wood that violates a specific municipal zoning law.
But when the citizens look at those exact same spaces...
They see the entirety of their economic existence. They see their personal history, their deeply woven community support networks, and their only lifeline to survival.
So the government is attempting to erase a legal violation, but in doing so, they are actively erasing human livelihoods.
Precisely.
So what does this all mean? When we put these two wildly conflicting realities side by side, the desperate, undeniable need for a functional, safe city on a macro level versus the desperate, undeniable need for human survival on a micro level, it brings the entire debate to a massive boiling point.
It really does.
Critics looking at this forceful clearing of neighborhoods are continually asking two vital questions, according to the report. Why now, and at what cost?
And those two questions form the absolute crux of the issue. Are these demolitions genuinely, practically necessary right this second for the long-term development of Uganda?
Or is there a deeper story happening here?
Right, a deeper unstated narrative about who actually gets to participate in this new, modernized vision of the country.
The phrase, why now, is the one we really need to focus on, I think.
Yeah.
Because these sprawling informal settlements, these thousands of intricate market stalls, they didn't just pop up yesterday afternoon.
No, they've been there for a long time.
They are the result of years, in many cases decades, of gradual informal urban expansion. The status quo has been maintained for a very long time. The fact that the government is suddenly deploying militarized security forces and heavy machinery today suggests that some kind of massive critical breaking point has been reached in Kampala's infrastructure.
And this raises an important question,
Right.
Tree. And the answer to why now lies in the physical limits of the city itself.
Yeah.
Kampala has hit an absolute infrastructural ceiling.
So it's not just politics.
No, this isn't just an aesthetic choice by a new administration. The system is buckling. The wetlands are completely saturated with informal construction
Meaning they can't absorb one more drop of water.
without causing catastrophic, deadly flash floods during the rainy season. And the traffic gridlock has transitioned from being a mere annoyance to causing total economic and logistical paralysis.
Wow.
The authorities have looked at the data and realized the status quo has become statistically deadly. The peril mentioned in the report's title isn't a future warning anymore.
It is an active, present reality.
Yeah, the city can literally no longer function under its current weight.
Which forces us to weigh these conflicting realities without looking away from the intense discomfort of either side.
Right.
Let's look at the wetlands again. From a pure utilitarian public safety standpoint, a forcefully cleared wetland might prevent a massive flood that saves hundreds of lives next month.
That is a tangible, vital public good.
But the immediate, inescapable human cost of achieving that future public good is a family standing in the street without a roof over their heads today. It's prioritizing tomorrow's theoretical safety over today's literal physical survival.
And that is the ultimate heartbreaking dilemma of modernizing any rapidly growing city in the developing world. The blueprint for a safe, functioning future almost always requires bulldozing the complex, messy reality of the present.
Yeah.
The critics of these sweeps aren't necessarily arguing that Kampala shouldn't have clear roads or functioning emergency services or proper drainage.
They are questioning the sheer brutality and suddenness of the method.
Exactly. The astronomical cost of this long-term progress is being paid entirely by the citizens who have the least capital to spare.
It's a steep, devastating price. And as we wrap up this deep dive into the report, let's briefly recap exactly what's at stake on the ground. We are watching two massive, unstoppable forces colliding violently in Uganda right now. On one side, you have a fierce, uncompromising government push to establish urban order, secure failing infrastructure, and force modernization before the city collapses.
Right. And on the other side, you have the fragile daily survival, the long-established homes, and the very livelihoods of thousands of the city's most economically vulnerable citizens.
It is a profound physical clash between the sanitized ideal of what a modern city should be and the chaotic, desperate reality of how its people actually manage to survive within it day after day.
Yeah, well said.
And depending entirely on where you happen to stand in Kampala right now, that bulldozer rolling down the street is either a necessary tool of long overdue life-saving progress,
Or it is an instrument of total unmitigated ruin.
yeah,
There is no middle ground when the blade drops.
the heavy machinery will eventually move on and the dust will settle. But the underlying systemic issues, the lack of affordable housing and formal jobs that created those massive informal economies in the first place, they remain entirely unresolved.
Yeah, absolutely unresolved.
Which leaves us with a final thought for you to mull over long after this discussion ends. Think back to that precarious reality we started with, relying on today's money for tonight's dinner. If a city violently destroys its entire informal economy in order to build a perfect modern utopia, what exactly happens to the thousands and thousands of people who simply can't afford to live in that new, polished version of the city?
Do you just vanish into thin air?
Or does the desperate cycle of informal settling simply restart just a little further out, a little deeper in the shadows?